I want to share with you the 10 books that I read during the season of winter. I have a Goodreads and a Fable where I do very in-depth reviews of all the books that I read. Starting off with January, the first book that I read during my England trip was Beautiful Cassandra by Jane Austen. This short story actually contains several different short stories. I didn't know what to expect from these short stories, but I was pleasantly surprised because it was filled with gossip, drama. It was also very witty and a humor that has endured so many centuries. I feel like we don't talk enough about how funny some of Jane Austen's works are. It's astonishing to think that Jane Austen wrote this when she was a preteen. I think she was 12, and she wrote them for fun to just show them to her family. She had a natural gift for storytelling. The next book that I read is New Year's Day by Edith Wharton. I actually read it in Catalan. This is the Petits Plaers Viena editions. I want to read more books in Catalan, but that being said, I don't know why I decided to read a book that was translated from English. The next Catalan book that I read is going to be an original written Catalan book because there's many classic Catalan books that I can read. This book is set in New York City. You guessed it, in New Year's Day. This book is inside a series which is called All New York City, I believe, and each book in this series is set in a different decade of the 19th century. This one is set in the 1870s. This book was written in the 1920s, and it's refreshing to see an author, also a woman, may I add, talking so openly about prostitution. This is not really a spoiler since from the very beginning of the book you are set in the scandal and what's going on. There's a fire in a Fifth Avenue hotel, and from there you see the scandal surface. When I was reading this book, I didn't really know what to feel, but once the narrator of the story becomes clear, the story kind of turned in a tender quality. At the end of this book, I realized that this book is not so much about scandal, gossip, or social status, which is also about that, but it's more about memories, more hypocrisy, and the limited mercy afforded to women who cannot afford to build a life for their own because men ruled the world and they still fucking do. Okay, now for a big book, The Luminaries by Eleanor Catton. This is set in Hokitika, New Zealand in the mid-1860s. This novel is a journey from the very beginning till the very end. There's just so much going on in a very slow pace. So let me set you into the story. This book requires patience since the story is told in unusual ways because the story is told from fragmented stories and fragmented conversations. At first it can be a little bit disorienting because trust me when I say that the first 300 pages were very confusing to me. Something extremely interesting about this book is that the parts and the pacing of the story follows the lunar cycles. The beginning is very slow. The first chapter is like 200 pages, and as the story progresses, the chapters just get shorter and shorter, and also the pacing of the book becomes quicker till the very end when you have a full moon. The chapters are like 2 pages long and the pacing is extremely fast. If you're interested in astrology, the novel is divided in 12 sections. It adds a nice layer if you're interested in astrology. If you're not, it doesn't really impact the story, so don't worry about that. As for the plot of the story, this book is a mystery. You don't really follow one specific story since there's a lot of different characters and you follow each one of the characters and all of the stories combined into one at the very end of the book. The mystery is that someone has been killed and we need to know who the killer was and the motive of the killing. The next book is My Husband's Wife by Alice Finney. I don't really read many mysteries and thrillers anymore because I don't find them brilliant enough nowadays. I feel like Alice Finney is a queen of gaslighting you into oblivion because you actually believe the things that she's telling you and then there's a plot twist that you never see coming. This book is really good at building tension. It grips you from the very first chapter. So if you're looking for a good mystery thriller to read, I think this is a good one. Now moving on to February, Wuthering by Emily Bronte. If you saw my winter diaries, you will know that I went to Yorkshire to the Bronte Pensioners. Whenever I think about that experience, I just get so deeply happy because it was such a, I don't know, it was such a wholesome and soulful moment for me. That Yorkshire moors during a rainy, windy day, something that is something completely wild. It's something that can easily make you lose your mind. So read about Heathcliff and Catherine and everyone that is basically insane in this book. You can really see that nature impacts this story and the characters. There's a lot of discourse with this novel now because of the movie that came out. I didn't like. I made a review on one of my Instagram reels that got pretty much a lot of hate. I got some very nasty messages from, guess what, men. I don't want to review the movie right now, but I'm going to leave in the description box my review of the film in case anyone is interested. But as of the book, there's two very famous quotes of this novel that have really stuck with me. He's more myself than I am. Whatever our souls are made of, his and mine are the same. If you take this quote out of context, it's an extremely beautiful quote. Also another quote that I love. You said I killed you, hunt me then. Be with me always, take any form, drive me mad, only do not leave me in this abyss where I cannot find you. I cannot live without my life, I cannot live without my soul. The book itself is tragic, brutal, and relentlessly angry. You can feel the anger in every chapter and also in every character. Catherine was a very good description of female rage. This is going to be a spoiler, so sorry, but this book was written centuries ago. Catherine is barely in this book. She dies at the middle of the book, and because at the beginning of the book she's already dead, we are kind of introduced into the story of Catherine Heathcliff. Catherine is barely in this book. You read about her name being written in a table, her 3 names, and then you feel her ghostly spirit, and then you're introduced to her anger, to her brutal ways of talking and acting. Even when she's dead, she haunts you. Like, she literally haunts everyone in this book. You barely see a trace of love in this novel. I know Kathy and Hareton sort of break the cycle of abuse. I feel like the only sort of healthy character in this book is Edgar Linton. Also, I just want to mention one thing about the movie, and this is the only thing I'm going to mention, I promise. Isabella Linton. In this book, she breaks free of Heathcliff and she goes away to have her kid, her son. You could say that that was a very feminist move back in the 19th century, in the mid 19th century in Yorkshire. Why the hell do they change Isabella Linton in the movie? That was one of the worst parts of the movie for me. That really made me mad. Like, I was actually internally screaming while I was watching Isabella Linton in the movies. I feel like every character in this book seemed to be locked into mystery and resentment, and none of them were actually trying to change the ways of being. The domestic abuse in this book was chilling to read, and the women from this book were trapped into a tiny social world. That's why they married their cousins or the people around them, because they didn't know anything outside of where they lived. And I feel like this is kind of a paralysis from Emily's life, because she lived in isolation. She hadn't left Haworth. There's a lot to dissect on this book. Obviously, there's a lot you can talk about. Next, my favorite book that I read during winter was The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins. But this is actually also a short story collection, and all the 3 short stories amazing. So starting off with The Yellow Wallpaper, this book is a really good example of postpartum depression without knowing you have that, and I feel like Charlotte Perkins Gilman really suffered from that. I read a lot of articles on her Wikipedia page, and from what I've gathered, the author was never truly drawn into a domestic life, like getting married and having kids, and I feel like that really reflects into the narrator of this story. Also, there's a doctor named in this story, which is Dr. Ware Mitchell, and guess what? That doctor actually existed, and that was actually Gilman's doctor. Gilman consulted this doctor after giving birth and suffering from postpartum depression herself. It's not really hard to imagine the opinion that Charlotte had of that doctor after reading this book. She doesn't really talk too highly about him. I'm going to read you the treatment that the doctor actually recommended, both in reality and in fiction. Enforced rest, no writing, and no intellectual stimulation. Prescriptions given by a man that has never given birth or suffered from postpartum depression. Don't you love that? Let's move on to the next story, which is A Rocking Chair. In this short story, we explore a male friendship that quickly turns into paranoia and mistrust. This short story has a trope that I completely adore. You don't know if what you're reading is actually true or it's just an imagination, and an unreliable narrator is one of my favorite tropes. This story is incredibly gripping from the very first page, and the last story is all water. When I was reading this one, I wasn't actually very sure if I was going to like it, but the ending was actually funny, like it made me laugh out loud. After reading this short story collection, I actually want to read a biography about Charlotte Perkins Gilman because I feel like she was such an interesting person. Then the next book I read was an extremely sad one, which is The Buddha in the Attic by Julie Otsuka. My sister actually gave me this book to read. The story begins just after First World War, where a group of young women and also girls were sent from Japan to the United States as picture brides. And by the end of the book, you're shown what it was like to be Japanese during the Second World War and during Pearl Harbor. The writing style is extremely interesting. I feel like I have never read anything like this. This was told in a plural first-person voice. This book made me even angrier with men and society. The next one is The Odyssey by Homer. The Christopher Nolan movie is coming out this summer and I wanted to be prepared. I actually read this book in 2 different languages. I read from this copy, which is the Spanish Feminine Classic Edition. I also read from the Emily Wilson translated English edition. This translation was more classically written and the Emily Wilson one was more accessible, I think. I deeply adore Greek mythology. I feel like I've said this many times, and I know this is set in Greece, but the islands, the landscapes, the descriptions of the weather and the people, it is extremely familiar to me being Mediterranean. So I feel like whenever I read these books, it just transports me into my own landscape. This is truly an epic tale. It has many adventures. It's timeless. It's like a timeless classic. This was written roughly 2,700 years ago, and obviously each translation is a little bit different, but the story itself, it's still there. It's an epic story. Okay, the next one is also a book that was quite the journey. Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. I adore the quote in the back. All happy families resemble one another. Each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. This book feels like a time capsule for 1870s aristocratic families in Russia. As you have probably seen, I have read a lot of classics set in the 19th century, like New Year's Day, The Luminaries, wuthering, this one. And I say this is a time capsule because Tolstoy wrote this novel during the 1870s, so it was written during the same decade that it was actually happening. There's a lot of historical events narrated in the story, like for example the 1861 emancipation of the serf, the constant debate of the new agricultural methods. I feel like after reading this book, I'm an expert in Russian agricultural methods of the 19th century, how landowners should manage their states, and also a main theme is the tension between the more classical rural life of Russia and also the tensions between the growing influence of the Western European ideas. A lot of the aristocratic people in this book speak French to one another, even though they are both Russians. And it's mentioned that they speak French because I think that language is more tender and they feel like that language really conveys the words and the phrases they want to say much better than your mother tongue Russian. This book is a time capsule because it really gives you a foreshadowing to what's going to happen in the 20th century, the Russian Revolution. And although this book is named after Anna Karenina, the story is so much more than that because it's an interwoven connection of all the different characters. The story has a constant debate about morality, about religion, about family, about politics. So you're constantly reminded about how Tolstoy was searching for his own morality and for his own religion. This is a book that I need to reread in the future because there's so much to decompress in this book, and I feel like I would adore it much more the second time around. Also, do not feel intimidated because the chapters are short and the translation, at least this translation, is so easy to follow. And last but not least, Chess by Stephen Zweig. His writing style is very melodramatic and that kind of lost me at the beginning and it was a little bit confusing. But the short allegorical writing was interesting. He has a very unique writing style. These are the 10 books that I read during the season of winter. I had a really good reading season. I'm really happy about the books I read. Also from the 10 books I read, 9 of them I physically owned and were on my physical TBR, so I'm doing a great job reading the books that I physically own. I hope you guys liked this video and I will see you very soon. Bye!